1919, and the Delta was a killing ground. Back in 1919.
Amid the vast cotton fields in the Mississippi Delta region of East Arkansas is an obscure town called Elaine. Its past is so controversial that people are afraid to talk about it generations later.
There is a palpable, you can feel the hatred.
In 1919, one of the country's worst racial massacres occurred in Elaine, Arkansas. Although what happened that fateful night is not entirely certain, it's clear that shots were exchanged between blacks and whites at an African-American church in Hoop Spur, not far from Elaine. Sharecroppers were holding a meeting in the church when gunfire erupted outside. One white man and an unspecified number of blacks died that night. In the days that followed, 4 whites and multiple blacks would die. The number remains in dispute.
I guess I was about 10 years old when that happened. And I remember how frightening everybody was. And they was talking about this Elaine riot. And they was saying that the people was going to come up in our territory and take all the ammunition from the black folks. Said they was going to take every kind of gun they found.
Professor John Graves of Henderson State University in Arkansas discussed the involvement of the Army in his book, Town and Country.
When the soldiers arrived in Elaine, they found the town in an uproar with hundreds of armed white men in the streets. The troops' commander, Colonel Isaac Jinks, immediately ordered everyone in Elaine, black and white, disarmed. The Army came in and rounded up the supposed black insurrectionists, hundreds of them. By doing so, it did actually certainly engage in repression, but it also protected them from the local whites who were basically running wild at the time.
To hide from the U.S. Army troops and white mobs, black sharecroppers and their families hid in nearby cotton and sugarcane fields, swamps, or other homes, or deep in the woods, hoping to escape the advancing mobs. A former mayor of Elaine, Lamar Marks, believed that the number who died in Elaine in 1919 was much less than reported. He also believed that blacks started the violence based upon their unsubstantiated fears.
What was really the cause of all of it, I think, was the man that owned the farm claimed more of the cotton. They were supposed to get a half. They wouldn't give him quite that much. They'd sell it, give him a cheaper price for it. And that's where the thing all started out.
It will not be easy for the descendants of the Elaine riot victims to forgive or forget. Published accounts about what happened in Elaine are important, but the need for dialogue continues, and until it happens, reconciliation will be difficult and perhaps impossible.
The wound has to be opened, the wound has to be cleansed, and then, and only then, can you apply the balm, the sweetness, the healing process. But if it is not opened, some hardened matter will exist below the surface. And in communities, we now begin to understand that that hardened matter, that resentment, that wound, in fact, that was never really properly cleaned, gets passed from generation to generation. And people sometimes don't understand where their own hostility and resentment and pain comes from, until they really discover that it does relate very much to events in the past.
A meaningful dialogue would focus on the scarred past as well as the conditions necessary for shared prosperity in the future. But without meaningful dialogue and action, Elaine's past is destined to control its future. I'm Linda Green. Thanks for joining me.
It happened on that red summer day. So much of our lives were washed away. Everything went wrong, and all our hope was gone. Nothing left to take away. And we can work it out, and we can come together in spite of all that we've gone through. We know that God is a healer. He mends every broken heart. But we can come together